Good morning. It's time for pre-market post game with yours truly, Dex the Algo Capitalist, aka the Vulcan, coming to you live from PulseWaveTrading.com, home of the world famous PulseWave price trigger reports that we put right in your hands each and every trading day. Hopefully everyone had a wonderful weekend and that you got some nice, well-needed and deserved rest and relaxation. But now it is time. It is time to get into it. Y'all know what we do and you know how we do it. So let's get to it. The opening bell is a minute. Up there it is. The opening bell right now, right before us. Starting a little late today, but we're going to still get it in because that's just what we do. Let's just take a look at what we got still. Dow futures up 147 points at 25,091. NASDAQ 100 futures down 26 and a quarter points at 98.41. Even the S&P 500 is now up 7.5 at 30.15 and a quarter. The Russell My Hustle is up 19.2 points at 1394.40. Bitcoin futures composite index down $135 at 9,085. And the low was 9,060 in the overnight. So still testing that support of 9,000. All right, nat gas is up 12 cents at $1.67. Crude oil up 17 cents at $38.67 a barrel. Long bond is down 9.30 seconds at 178.26. That's 178 and 26.30 seconds. Gold futures up $3.50 at $17.83.80. Silver is down 10 cents at $18.06 per ounce. Taking a look at the dollar, it's off 18 pips at 97.25. The euro dollar is up 45 at 112.92. Pound sterling off 40 pips at 123.08. Aussie is off 8 pips at 65.57. Canadian dollar is off 12 pips at 136.78. Euro yen up 88 pips at 121.20. And the dollar yen is up 23 pips at 107.44. Kiwi is off two pips at 64.16. Beans are off a half a point at 8.60 and a half. Corn is up 3 points at 3.28 and a quarter, and wheat is up 2 and a quarter. Make that 2.5 points at 4.78 quarter. So that's what your overnight markets are looking like. Now that we got the opening bell, we'll see what happens on that. I hit the wrong thing. My apologies. Okay, there's our data. All right, let's take a look and see what's going on in the overnight market news. All right, so the news is as follows. The Fed bought debt in Warren Buffett's Berkshire Hathaway, Coca-Cola, Walmart, and McDonald's in its first spree of corporate bond buying. The Fed bought $428 million worth of corporate bonds in its first foray into company debt as part of its response to the coronavirus, snapping up debt in household names like Coca-Cola, AT&T, and Berkshire Hathaway in the process. Wait a minute. Warren Buffett doesn't need your money. You're buying stock in Berkshire Hathaway? The stock is thousands of dollars a share. What are you doing? They don't need a bailout from the Fed. They don't need you to buy their stock. So now the Fed is trading. They're actively trading. U.S. shale oil giant Chesapeake Energy files for bankruptcy as the coronavirus crisis claims another energy victim. Chesapeake Energy filed for bankruptcy on Sunday, making it the biggest casualty among U.S. energy giants as the coronavirus pandemic upends the oil industry. Global stocks are mixed as investors weigh COVID-19 deaths, topping 500,000, and markets are hit with a nervous calm. In Asia, stocks are down. In Europe, stocks are up. In the U.S., futures are mixed. And Wirecard stock soars 185% and a dead cat bounce after its week from hell, but it's still down 97% in 2020. The stricken German fintech stock is at around 3.18 pounds on Monday, but was above 140 pounds as recently as April. You know, you have to keep it 100. That's a monstrous situation right there. That's tough. That's mad tough. But hey, what you gonna do? You know, what can you do? At the end of the day, what can you do? You know? So it's like no one is safe. There's no safety place to go. All right. Facebook has bent its hate speech and misinformation policies around Trump since before he was president, report says. An explosive new report from the Washington Post claims Facebook has weakened its hate speech and misinformation policies because of Donald Trump's ascent to power. So, in other words, they are bugging. They're losing their minds over this man. They really hate him that much. They hate him that much. They're that scared of him. Like, for real. Unbelievable. It's just one man, folks. All right. An explosive new report from the Washington Post claims Facebook has weakened its hate speech and misinformation policies because of Donald Trump's ascent to power. LVMH-backed Australian swimsuit brand is administration due to virus. Folly Party Limited, an Australian swimsuit maker, part owned by French fashion giant LVMH, Moet Hennessy, Louis Vuitton, Southeast or SE, appointed administrators on Monday, citing a sales downturn from the coronavirus, the latest casualty of the health crisis in the country's retail sector. UK markets watchdog Wirecard says Wirecard restrictions to stay for now. Britain's Financial Conduct Authority on Monday said its restrictions on collapsed German payments company Wirecard will remain until its concerns have been satisfied. Nokia wins Taiwan mobile 5G contract worth $450 million. Finnish telecoms equipment maker Nokia OYJ said on Monday it has won a 5G contract worth about 400 million euros, which is $449.48 million from Taiwan Mobile to build out the telecom's operator's next-gen network as the sole supplier. Quarter earnings coming in, IHH Healthcare, BHD, first quarter 2020, and Micron Technology, third quarter 2020 earnings are due. Economic data releases today, the U.S. Fed's Williams speech and the U.S. 3-month bill auction are due. Well, let's see here. What else we got? There seems to be no shortage of things that we got to deal with today. The biggest thing that we need to deal with is what I shared with you guys last week regarding the tremendous algo shift that is occurring across all markets. It seems that no market is safe. Everyone is dealing with this spike in volatility, and people need to know what's going on and where we go from here. Well, we have another thing that's popped up on my radar, and that is silver. I have reason to believe that silver is about to pop. It's about to go absolutely bananas like it did back in 2011. And this time, I do believe it's going to take out the old highs. And it's going to go, I think it's going to kind of spike above it on like a big nasty run. And I think we're going to go to 55 before we get a pause. So I just want to throw that out there for you guys as well. I think That is the next thing that's about to take place. So I wanted to warn everybody of that. Yes, that is a big deal. It is a huge deal. It's not something that you can just easily, um, you know, wave off and say, oh, that ain't about nothing. Ain't nothing happening. Nah, you're not going to be able to get away with that on this one. Nope, it's happening. It's happening right as we speak. A lot of markets are getting it right now, and that's going to continue as volatility increases. Some of you guys have already noted that there's already been a tremendous amount of volatility and shifts going on in the markets that you guys trade and or are invested in. And I'm here to tell you, I know you noticed what the algos was looking like when the Sunday afternoon report came out. You noticed some differences. Well, I'm here to let you know, FYI, if you thought Sunday's report was interesting, wait until you see tonight's report. So just a heads up, I'm just letting y'all know it's going to be on and popping. All right, so here are the notables that we started off Sunday night, which carry over and spill over until today. As far as the notables, when I say the notables, I'm looking at the stock index futures, and I'm looking at forex, and I'm looking at the futures in general. In all of those, we only had one bona fide rally alert today, and guess where it was? A market you don't usually hear talked about that much, and that's natural gas. Nat gas started off with a rally alert today. That's right, a rally alert in the nat gas. So it is not weird to us that we see nat gas up this morning, up 14 cents right now at 168.80. That is not a fluke. We knew it coming into today because of the rally alerts. That's why we have them, ladies and gentlemen. The rally alerts are there for a reason. All right, you ignore them at your own peril. Now, what I'm expecting today in the stock index futures is for pretty much a narrow range inside day, not a black Monday, not a green Monday, none of that. I'd expect a quiet day today. Not just because there were no key alerts, but because of how the markets are behaving right now. What do I mean? What I mean is coming into today, for instance, those equity markets are starting to turn and point back down. All right, we're in a corrective state right now in the U.S. equity market. So what the market will be looking to do is sell rallies. You probably won't get that today. So what you'll be waiting for is to see where the market closes. And I can almost assure you that if not tonight, then most likely tomorrow night at the latest is where you'll see the market start to turn back down again. Once again, these are just not opinions. This is based on what the market is doing right now in real time. So I give it to you, FYI, so you can be on the right side of the market and not get smoked. Because those that don't pay attention to what's happening in the markets, they get what? Smoked. You don't want to get smoked. You want to be on the right side. All right, so be patient. Trade what the market gives you. That's all you can do. If you've been tossed up lately, like I say, I recommend you just following the weeklies. All right, it's a much slower process, and it'll help you to get a couple of good wins under your belt and get you back on track again. That's what I designed the system to do. All right, not only is it forward looking, but like I said, it's designed to put you on the right side of the market. That is very crucial and important especially in these uncertain times that we're in right now. You want to be put on the right side of the market. So as you go forward, moving forward from today, you're going to start seeing very interesting things start to shape up in these markets. And it's not a fluke. These things are happening for a reason. So I just want to throw that stuff out there. And I want to encourage everybody. It's going to be a very interesting week. And I believe that the profit potential this week is going to be enormous for those that can put themselves on the right side of things. All right. So that's this morning's pep talk. All right. Chin up, all that good stuff. And let's get ready because, like I told you before, it's going to be a bumpy ride. All right. Now, let's go in. A lot of people are saying that, they're starting to wake up to economic stuff, even despite what's been happening. So here we go. There is an amusing piece on the Financial Times Alphaville listing 20 things investors should look for when trying to work out who will be the next wild card. You don't need to be a financial genius to work out which company might be talking about. It's a basic wake-up call. In periods of economic darkness, it's all too easy to be persuaded as to the efficacy of snake oil. If something overpromises, makes lots of noise while under-delivering, and is basically a personality cult, then it's long-term unlikely to be a particularly successful investment. That's right. All sizzle and no steak. But back in the real world, we are nearly halfway through 2020. Although we've been shocked, surprised, and buffeted by the virus, and I have to say, the lackluster intervention of the governments to support companies and mitigate job losses, while central banks have calmed the markets with the opium of QE infinity, I can't help but wonder if the real earthquakes are yet to come, hence the algo shift alerts that you receive from me. Now, I have to say, at the end of the day, the markets will recover and we will continue to have this stair-step approach. I still don't believe we've seen the highs in the markets, nor have we seen the lows. All right, so I just like to put that out there. The crisis is unlike anything we've ever experienced, seen, or heard of before. Normally, a market crash is an explosive event. It occurs when something in financial spheres break, like confidence in housing and financial system in 2007, or valuations in the dot-com crash, or faith in credit constructs like during the European sovereign debt crisis in 2010s. In each case of financial mayhem, you may have experienced a sense of great crash like 1986. The initial shock and horror gradually lessens as the market discounts the shock, shrugs it off, and carries on. The global financial crisis of 2007 and 2008 has some similarities to current events. It was slow. It took more than a year from the situation with Bear Stearns, structured credit funds, to the collapse of commercial paper markets, the run on Northern Rock, till we got the collapse of Lehman in September of 2008. As banks were bailed out and rescued, they were around 3 months in 2008 when it felt like financial markets were irreparably broken. Of course, they weren't. Governments and central banks nursed them through. Stock markets were extremely volatile, but were equally swift to arbitrage that support, triggering a rally that lasted 12 years, largely on the back of markets being distorted by ultra low rates and none other than quantitative easing. Let's not forget, folks, the stock market rallied the way it did, not because of the strength of the underlying U.S. economy. Oh, no. It did it because of the zero interest rates and the QE infinity. But this time feels different. The crisis started off with a meteor strike, which was the lockdown, the stupid decision to lock down the world and halt commerce because of a virus. We've never seen anything impact the real economy so drastically. Normally, it happens the other way around. Financial crashes impact the markets, and only then does the pain trickle down into the real world. This time, it's real jobs and production that got hit first. That's fundamentally different. Now, you may not be convinced that markets really understand that difference. The effect on the real economy of financial failure is felt in terms of the flow of capital to businesses. If a bank blows up, it will impact savers and borrowers for sure, but this time we're looking at how will crashing earnings and diminished rental incomes hit the financial markets. But they're behaving as if it's just another round of QE infinity for the markets to arbitrage. As we all know, markets are completely delinked to the real world at present. Yet the damage the real world is going to inflict on financial markets is going to be huge. But that's not what you see the banking regulators and authorities preparing for. No, on the contrary, they're pushing financial institutions to participate by easing lending and supporting confidence. You can understand why. Yet they also know a crisis is coming. Just read the dissenting statement by Fed Governor Lael Brainard after she stepped back from the Fed's decision to allow bank dividends. Quote, many large banks are likely to need greater loss-absorbing capital to avoid breaching their buffers and adverse circumstances next year, end quote. It's a quote from her. All right. The bottom line is global central banks know a financial crisis is not only possible, but probable. There are many issues here. Is the market pricing in a major financial systems crisis to a limited extent? What if rising real-world problems trigger a massive NPL crisis? Effectively, the whole financial system now sits on financial assets like stocks, shares, which are underpinned by government support. How sustainable is that? How? For instance, in the UK, commercial landlords have received less than 20% of their rental incomes on the past 2 quarter days. The day tenants are supported to pay the next 3 months' rent. Property experts expect landlords will recover much of that rent in the aftermath of the shutdowns. That will be interesting. How many more names are likely to disappear from high streets, and how many more shopping malls will fall into receivership as folk keep shopping from home? Yeah, the old brick and mortar way of doing things has been dying ever since the onset of eBay and Amazon. That's for sure. A lot of companies were a little slow to start allowing people to shop off of the internet. Not many companies had websites even 10 years ago. This is a newer phenomenon as the internet itself, the Internet of Things, has changed. Companies failing to pay rents or dividends is no longer just a banking problem. Risk is now far more widely spread across the whole financial system. Insurance companies and sovereign wealth funds own most city offices, and most people don't know that. All right. Insurance companies and sovereign wealth funds own most city offices. Fund managers that rely on dividend income are likely to be sadly disappointed as incomes dry up as a result of government fiat or the back of the dismal earning seasons we're about to experience. The path for markets will depend on what surprises us next. In previous crises, you've seen markets roiled by a massive shock before falling in a predictable path. The daily news becomes less shocking, the markets become less volatile, and start to seek opportunity. All right, you start seeing at least a pulse of the market and starts to find some type of equilibrium. This time, I don't think the real financial shock has yet occurred. The dominant issue remains the quote unquote virus. The market news creating the current risk on, risk off volatility is all about how COVID-19 is slow burning its way across the southern U.S. States, triggering renewal lockdowns and spooking the markets. Last I heard, there were two states, I think Texas was one of them, that were shutting down again. The sheer size of the U.S. is one issue, but lax lockdowns and early reopenings in states that hadn't reached anything close to a peak infections is yet another. The virus is going to remain a massive threat, but real economic and political issues are going to emerge in coming weeks. You got dismal corporate earnings, stories like the collapse of gas fracker Chesapeake Energy, or Boeing struggling to relaunch the dismal 737 MAX will dominate the news flow. Then you got geopolitics, ranging from the deepening China-US standoff to the EU fighting battles on Brexit. The poor South and the Democratic challenge from the East are likely to remain negative. And let's not forget domestic politics and domestic terrorism by way of Antifa and Black Lives Matter, funded by George Soros. Also, an increasing number of fund managers list the U.S. November election as the biggest fear. Few would admit to being Trump supporters, but there is clear fear of a Biden presidency, achieving a clean sweep of both the Senate and Congress. Meanwhile, Macron's drubbing in French local elections and the hopeful pro-European vote in Poland highlights voters' unhappiness with current regimes. I have to say, ladies and gentlemen, the biggest fear during this election is not a Biden win. The Biden win is a big fear indeed, but it's not the biggest fear. Do you know what the biggest fear is, ladies and gentlemen? The biggest fear is that we won't have one at all. No election. That is what people fear the most. All right? Just saying. Okay? No one really wants to talk about that. They want to pretend like that doesn't even exist. But it does. All right? It does. People are afraid of that, and for good reason. Can you blame them? No, you cannot. So, where does that put us? Well, I'd say it puts us in quite a pickle, to be quite honest with you. I don't know if there's any getting out of it. It's a rough situation indeed. How do you? How do you? I mean, I know how they create money out of thin air. We don't need to even discuss that, but I think we do need to discuss how do you create jobs out of thin air? We know how you create money out of thin air, but what about jobs? How in the world do you create jobs out of thin air? Let's examine this Chesapeake situation a little bit further, shall we? Okay. I think this holds the key for us. Maybe we'll get some understanding if we dive a little bit deeper. All right, so Chesapeake files for bankruptcy, wiping out $7 billion in debt, along with any existing equity value. After years of melting, the Chesapeake ice cube is finally history. At exactly 3:50 p.m. on Sunday afternoon, the company that launched the U.S. shell boom finally gave up and filed for a prepackaged bankruptcy in the Southern District Court of Texas. In doing so, the company, with roughly $9.5 billion in debt, has become one of the biggest victims of a spectacular collapse in energy demand from the virus induced global recession. Stop saying virus induced. It's not virus induced, it's virus response induced global recession. The virus didn't do anything. The government's response to the virus is what caused this. Blame the government, blame your elected officials who agreed to shut down the economy in response to the virus. That is the problem, ladies and gentlemen. This is a problem of our own making. Okay? Capiche? $9.5 billion in debt has become one of the biggest victims of a spectacular collapse in energy demand from the pandemic virus induced economic shutdowns that resulted in global recession. And this follows the collapse of another high flyer in the U.S. oil patch, Whiting Petroleum, which filed for Chapter 11 at the start of April after championing what was once the premier U.S. shale field, the Bakken of North Dakota. As part of its pre-pack agreement, Chesapeake announced that it had entered into a restructuring support agreement, or RSA, with 100% of the lenders under its revolving credit facility, holders of approximately 87% of obligations under its term loan agreement, approximately 60% of its senior secured second lien notes due in 2025, and approximately 27% of its senior unsecured notes, pursuant to which Chesapeake will implement a Chapter 11 plan of reorganization to eliminate approximately $7 billion of debt. It is what it is. Hey, man, I see you in the live, Dave. He says, how about an update on your excellent 2016 prediction on the United States becoming the world's sweatshop? Well, I think you're starting to see that right now. I think that's going to be one of the consequences and outcomes of the U.S. shutdown. Remember, each shutdown from each country has its own peculiarities about it and nuances. The U.S. was already in deep trouble. Now, I mean, it's like taking on a heavyweight fight, knowing you have a hairline fracture in your hand and your arm. It's not going to end well for you. And that's exactly what just happened. The U.S. had a fractured elbow, a fractured arm, a fractured hand, and it still got in the ring for a heavyweight fight. And the outcome is total destruction. What else can you have? You can't. There's nothing else. There's no other outcome. That's exactly what's happening. You got 50 million families now on unemployment. That's ridiculous. And what is unemployment but another form of welfare? All right? People don't like to talk about it, but it is. Unemployment is another form of welfare. It's just what it is. But it just sounds better. Oh, I'm on unemployment. It's no different than being on welfare and receiving an EBT card. Doesn't matter. As a matter of fact, if you're on unemployment, you can have your money put on a EBT card, a debit card. Okay, so it's the same thing. It just doesn't have the stigma that full-blown welfare has on it. Okay, so people still like to talk trash about people that are on welfare, not knowing everybody's individual circumstance and situation, but yet they'll gladly take an unemployment check. See what I'm saying? Money that they didn't earn, money that taxpayers are giving to them. They don't want to think about that. No one wants to think about that. And what about all the other things that they do for you, such as forcing banks to do forbearance because you've been late on your mortgage? Again, these are all handouts. This is all a form of welfare, whether it's corporate welfare or individual welfare. Welfare is still welfare. Now, of course, since 73% of unsecured bondholders refused to sign off on the deal, expect a very vicious bankruptcy fight over the recoveries, as hedge funds that accumulated positions in the bonds unleash hell in their fight with the secured, even as the equity committee claims that all classes above it should be unimpaired. Also, we have had bad news for Jeffries, which won't be able to repeat its hilarious attempt to fund the company in bankruptcy by selling stock to Robinhood day traders. As part of the RSA, the company has secured $925 million in debtor in possession financing lenders under Chesapeake's revolving credit facility. The DIP will provide Chesapeake the capital necessary to fund its operations during the court-supervised Chapter 11 reorganization proceedings. Okay? This is what it is. To summarize, Chesapeake, which enters bankruptcy with just over $9.5 billion in debt, will eliminate about $7 billion of it and emerge with a $2.5 billion exit financing consist of a new $1.75 billion revolving credit facility and a new $750 million term loan. Additionally, according to the RSA, the company has the support of its term loan lenders and secured note holders to backstop a $600 million rights offering upon exit. Do you see how bad this is getting? This is just one company, ladies and gentlemen. One company. One company. We have hundreds of companies that are in the same condition. What is the result of all this? Well, global trade recovery could be weakened by multiple disputes. What does this lead to? This leads to a very scary prospect. Mass tracking. COVI-PASS, an immunity passport to be rolled out in 15 countries. You heard me right. COVI-PASS, which is an immunity passport to be rolled out in 15 countries. COVI-PASS will determine whether you can go to a restaurant if you need a medical test or are due for a talking to by authorities in a post-COVID world. Consent is voluntary, but enforcement will be compulsory. Once again, consent is voluntary, but enforcement will be compulsory. All right? Though the magic of intent meme culture, most millennials will be familiar with the famous opening scene of the 1942 film Casablanca, where two policemen stop a civilian in the old Moorish section of Nazi-occupied French Morocco and asked him for his papers. Papers, please. The subject is taken away at once after failing to produce the required documents. The cinematic exchange has been used ever since as a popular reference to the ever-encroaching hand of the state, which is now on the verge of attaining a level of control over people's movements that puts the crude Nazi methods to shame. All right? This is what it is. As British cybersecurity company in partnership with several tech firms, is rolling out the COVI-PASS in 15 countries around the world, a digital health passport that will contain your COVID-19 test history and other relevant health information. The key here is other relevant health information. You can say goodbye to HIPAA. HIPAA died a horrible death. It died of COVID-19. According to the company website, the passport's objective is to safely return to work and resume social interactions by providing authorities with up-to-date and authenticated health information. That is another nice way to say your medical records, your medical history. The objectives mirror those that Bill Gates has been promoting since the start of COVID-19 lockdown. This is being rolled out in 15 countries. That's almost all of the G20 countries. And you better believe it's going to include all of the G8. Yeah. You got the G20. That's almost all of the G20. Let that marinate for a minute. In an essay written by Gates in April, the software geek philanthropist lays out his support for the draconian measures taken in response to the virus, and like an old-timey mob boss, suggests the solutions to this deliberately imposed problem. Ironically, Gates begins to make his case for the adoption of mass tracking and surveillance technology in the U.S. by saying that for now, the United States can follow Germany's example, end quote. He then touts the advantages of the, quote, voluntary adoption of digital tools, end quote. Of course, you know he's going to make himself exempt. He then touts the advantages of this voluntary adoption of digital tools, so we can remember where we have been and can choose to share it with whoever comes to interview you about your contacts. Of course, you know they're going to exempt themselves. This reminds me of the episode of the Black Mirror, where everyone's like, okay, fine, you do it first and then we'll do it. And then what happened was the heads of the company had their personal information hacked and revealed to everyone, to the world. And that's what took them down. All right, that's what it is. COVI-PASS promises to work as digital health passport, allowing users deemed uninfected to attend public gatherings, among other privileges. So now being an adult is a privilege and not a right. You're no longer autonomous. This is just the beginning part of the Borg we were talking about. You won't be able to go anywhere, and you won't be able to buy or sell anything unless you are connected to the Borg. I warned you that this was coming. I told you this was coming. I told you years ago. Gates goes on to predict that the ability to attend public events in the near future will depend on the discovery of an effective treatment. But he remains pessimistic that any such cure will be good enough in the short term to make people feel safe to go out again. These warnings by the multi-billionaire dovetail perfectly with the stated purposes of the aforementioned COVI-PASS, whose development is also being carried out in partnership with Red Stripe Group, a sports marketing consultancy firm that is working with England's Premier League and their Project Restart to parse ticket sales and only make them available to people who have tested negative for the virus. See what I'm saying? Now this COVI-PASS is the beginning stages of the mark of the beast, and without it, you will not be allowed admission. Today, you won't be able to go to the stadium to watch the football game. Tomorrow, you won't be able to shop for food in the grocery store. You won't be able to hold a bank account or open a bank account. You won't be able to cross one county to the next. You won't be able to travel. You won't be able to get a job. Sorry, we can't hire you without this documentation. Good question. Where are the civil rights attorneys? They all lost their jobs. They were laid off during the shutdown because civil rights has been suspended. You don't have any rights anymore. So since you don't have rights, you don't need civil rights attorneys. They all got paid off. They're chilling in the Bahamas or Turks and Caicos, chilling. They all got paid off. They got a nice golden parachute. All they have to do is shut up and say nothing. So you won't be able to attend public events. You won't be able to go outside without this. It's a scarlet letter, ladies and gentlemen. That's the nicest way to say it. Until you have proof of your digital identity, you can go nowhere. VST Enterprises goes viral. VST Enterprises Limited, known as VSTE, is led by 31-year-old entrepreneur Louis James Davis, who very recently stepped down from a science and technology ambassadorship of the African nation of Zimbabwe to focus on the company's role in the UN's SDG, Sustainable Development Goals, collaboratory initiative comprising a series of cyber technology projects across all 193 member states of the United Nations. That is virtually the entire world. You can make an argument for how many countries there are. Most people agree there's about 200 countries. Well, that's 193 member states right there. So that's worldwide, ladies and gentlemen. Being done where? At the United Nations. These will use the same proprietary V code and V platform technologies underpinning the COVI-PASS that will reportedly tackle issues such as illegal mining and counterfeiting. This third generation barcode technology overcomes the limitations of older second generation versions like QR codes, according to Davis. Illegal mining and counterfeiting. At first glance, when you hear that, you think illegal mining, or so you're going to start mining for gold and silver without permission. That's what they want you to think. They talk about illegal mining. They're talking about crypto. It's using the same sentence as counterfeiting. Crypto. Remember, they're building out a global blockchain owned and operated by the UN, the one world government. And yes, people will be getting paid to mine just like you do in the regular crypto markets. Illegal mining. People are going to try to hack it, and you will go to jail just like that. Yeah. They're going to use the same proprietary V codes. This third generation barcode technology overcomes the limitations of older second generation codes. Data and sensitive information scanned or stored in either a QR code, excuse me, a barcode can be hacked and are inherently insecure, Davis claims, leaving data and personal details to be compromised. These and other flaws of the prevailing proximity apps were exploited by VST Enterprises to position itself to land large government and private sector contracts. Excuse me, once again, these and other flaws of the prevailing proximity apps were exploited by VST Enterprises. Why? To position itself to land large government and private sector contracts. That right there is corporate espionage and hacking. Finding flaws in removing your competition by hacking and then exposing the hack to the world. Now you know why so many hacks have been occurring over the last 10 years. Because they were setting up the argument to bring this to being. You don't want to use all that other stuff. Use us because we don't have these issues. We're hack proof. See what's going on? See what's going on? Do you see what's going on? By all measures, the strategy has proven wildly successful, and VST now enjoys strong favor in the highest circles of the UK government, as evidenced by the ringing endorsement of former Prime Minister Theresa May. Prominently displayed on the COVI-PASS website, more practically, VST now has a direct partnership with the UK government and has secured contracts to deploy its technology in 15 countries, including the following. Listen carefully. Italy, Portugal, France, India, the United States of America, Canada, Sweden, Spain, South Africa, Mexico, United Arab Emirates, and the Netherlands. In May, VST signed a deal with international digital health technology firm and owner of COVI-PASS, CirclePass Enterprises, CPE, to integrate VST's V code into the biometric RFD-enabled passports. Biometric RFID-enabled passports. Biometric RFID-enabled passports, which can be accessed via mobile phone or a key fob, will flash colored lights to denote if an individual has tested negative, positive, or is to be denied entry to public locations. Awarded the Seal of Excellence by the EU V code technology, will ensure that all of our most sensitive personal and health information can be accessed by authorities at a distance, dispersing with messy and potential dangerous face-to-face encounters with police or other enforcement personnel. Once again, this is not to help you, it is to help them control you. Do you understand? So now, a stranger will have access to all of your information, ladies and gentlemen. It goes beyond your sensitive personal and health information, personal information, credit report. Credit reports, as you know, the Tri-Merge mortgage report has everything about you on it. It shows all of your known previous and current addresses. It shows if you owe child support, if you've been incarcerated, what your lines of credit are looking like, how maxed out you are on your credit cards, if you've paid them on time. It shows all your installment loans and revolving lines of credit. It shows all the places where you worked. This new technology is going to make the tri-merge mortgage report dwarf in comparison. They will have access to everything about you. And you need to know this, ladies and gentlemen. It will have all of your social media as well. And because the special technology will be able to bring up certain things about you, it will almost look like an NSA report or dossier on you. Certain individuals will have certain access to certain things about you that is needed to know. So imagine Interpol and all these other organizations being meshed into one little report, one screen, everything about you literally on one screen. And of course, the government's feelings about you on the one screen. Everything will be there. And each person will have different things put them. You may be a red person or a blue person or an orange person or a yellow person. Each one of these color codes will mean something, ladies and gentlemen. This person we believe is a known terrorist. This person we believe was part of Black Lives Matter. This person we believe is part of Antifa. This person has been very vocal, not just on mainstream media, but also on alternative media, talking about things. Every useful idiot, listen to me, every useful idiot of the system will be given the worst color codes. And you will not be able to go nowhere or do nothing. You are all useful idiots being used by you, and you are going to be the one to be the fall guy. All of you guys, and even the people who are like the heads of the Black Lives Matter movement, they think they doing something. They think they really can't be touched because they're part of the LGBTQ community. When this thing rolls out, they're not going to matter either. As a matter of fact, they're going to lose all their power, and they too will be thrown in prison, and they too will be limited in what they can do. They won't be allowed in government functions. They probably won't be allowed in government buildings. You're going to see, mark my words, every useful idiot who has gone on camera thinking they doing something, you are going to be turned out, and they're going to turn their backs on you after they turn you out. They're going to escort you to an internment camp. You just wait and see. And by the time you realize everything I've ever told you was true and correct, it will be too late for you because you will be already in an internment camp. And they already got the NDAA behind them in the Patriot Act where they can detain you indefinitely. Let's infuse the narrative here. So far, the concerns over the digital health passport's threat to freedom and privacy have been lukewarm at best, and it seems as if the world has already accepted that full-fledged population control methods such as these will simply be a fact of life. While the coronavirus pandemic has certainly done much to bring the public over to this way of thinking, the campaign to normalize this sort of Orwellian power grab has been ongoing for many years, and Bill Gates, who many media outlets have whitewashed out of stories related to these measures, has been at the forefront of its promotion. You heard it right. Think about it. Let that sink in for at least a minute. The innovation for uptake, scale and equity, and immunization infuse project was launched in Davos, Switzerland in 2016. 2016 is an interesting year because isn't that the year that I warned everybody about what was coming? Isn't that the same year I did those 2 documentaries? The program was developed by an organization funded by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation called Gavi, the Vaccine Alliance, which has been calling for a digital health ID for children, along with partners in the broader ID 2020 initiative like the Rockefeller Foundation and Microsoft. The Rockefeller Foundation and Microsoft. Rockefeller has been dead for like 100 years and he's still causing havoc. In a recent interview, the deputy director of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, Hassan Dumluji, derided the idea that the COVID-19 pandemic was in any way subsiding and even warned that far from receding, the pandemic was deep into wave three. His remarks were specifically targeted to the very regions he oversees for the foundation, which include the Middle East and parts of Asia, which he stressed would be the focus of the next wave. Again, ladies and gentlemen, tipping the hand, letting you know that this is a pandemic, that they can attack whoever and whenever and wherever they want, however. Whenever, wherever, however they want, to whoever. Think about it. Most recently involved in a 5-year fundraising cycle for Gavi, Mr. Damluji, an effort led by Saudi Arabia, whose investment he praised as a powerful signal that others had an obligation to follow. All right, see, Saudi Arabia is just the Middle East America. And Saudi Arabia is not very liked by its neighbors because it's been in bed with the U.S. Gates conducts his editorial with a comparison to World War II, stating that said conflict was a defining moment of our parents' generation, as the COVID-19 pandemic is to ours, implying that the changes taking place now are akin to the Allied forces' defeat of the Third Reich, except, of course, the immunity passports or digital health certificates sound exactly like what Hitler wished for the most. After all, wasn't the idea of a superior race based on considerations of superior health and validity over the ostensibly sick and unfit? Hard to argue against that idea that a universal health passport is nothing less than the ultimate fulfillment of that dystopian nightmare. Ladies and gentlemen, start your engines. This is not a test. This is for real, and they are playing for keeps. It is not a game. 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 And I hope y'all realize that. These dudes are not playing. They want to take over the world. All right? And they have a plan to bring it to pass. This is the plan. Please don't get this twisted. All right? This is reality. You ain't got to like it, but you do have to deal with it. All right? This cannot be overlooked. This cannot be just waved off. Okay? Or dismissed because it's real. This is something they want to do. This is something that they feel they must do. They got to do. Therefore, they will do it. All right? I'm just saying. This is how they're going to track you, ladies and gentlemen. Remember, I said their plan was to track you in real time, not just with video footage, but also with sound. They got microphones in every camera. I tried to tell you that. I tried to warn you about that. I tried. All right. That's all I can do. I can't do nothing else. I'm just one dude. I'm just one dude. That's it. I'm just one dude. What more do you want from me? All right. I told you what it is. Now you know. So you can't say that you didn't know. So now I need you to do me a favor. I told you it was going to be a bumpy ride. And now you really got to put on your big girl and big boy pants and get ready to go deep, because we got to go deep. And it's going to be uncomfortable, but it's something we got to deal with. We gotta deal with it. There's just no two ways around it. All right. Are you ready? Well, you know I'm gonna say, gentlemen, start your engines, because now it's time to go deep. All right. Here we go. Let's deal with something else. The news has been filled with reports about Black Lives Matter supporters vandalizing and tearing down statues of slave traders, slave owners, and anyone who they perceive as having been historically involved with slavery. In Bristol, England, a statue of the slave trader Edward Colston was pulled down and thrown into the harbor. In Belgium, statues of King Leopold were defaced. The actions have caused some local authorities to consider whether all statues perceived as offending current sensibilities should be removed. The London mayor, Sadiq Khan, announced a commission to examine the future of landmarks such as statues and street names in the UK capital. All right. What is not apparent is how attacking old statues of people who have been long dead is supposed to help anyone, especially millions of Black and non-Black people who are still enslaved today. It would appear that the woke activists of Black Lives Matter and their many kneeling supporters do not care about the plight of modern slaves, of which there are an estimated whopping 40 million today. Evidently, it is far easier and presumably more pleasurable to destroy Western historical monuments than to embark on the difficult work of actually abolishing modern slavery. Can you say hypocrite? In the UK itself, there is a shocking range of modern slavery, something that the local wokesters are happy to ignore as they bravely attack statues of stone and metal. According to the UK government's 2019 annual report of modern slavery, there are at least 13,000 potential victims of slavery in the UK. Although, as that number dates back to 2014, it is questionable. According to the 2018 Global Slavery Index, there are an estimated 136,000 people living in modern slavery just in Britain alone. Slavery in the UK takes the form of forced labor and domestic and sexual exploitation. Albanians and Vietnamese are among the groups that constitute the majority of slaves. British news outlets have run several stories about the estimated thousands of Vietnamese, half under the age of 18, who are kidnapped and trafficked to the UK, where they are forced to work as slaves on cannabis farms. There, they form a small part of the vast criminal machine that supplies Britain's 2.6 billion pounds of cannabis black market. Those who are not forced to work in the cannabis industry are enslaved in nail bars, brothels and restaurants, or kept in domestic servitude behind the doors of private residences. In January, BBC News ran a story about a Vietnamese boy named Ba who was kidnapped by a Chinese gang and trafficked to the UK, where his Chinese boss starved him and beat him whenever one of the cannabis plants failed. Black Lives Matter may not care much about Vietnamese lives in the UK after all. They're all about black lives. So how about black slaves in Africa in 2020? There are currently an estimated 9.2 million men, women, and children living in modern slavery in Africa, according to the Global Slavery Index, which includes forced labor, forced sexual exploitation, and forced marriage. According to the UN's International Labor Organization, ILO, there are more than 3 times as many people in forced servitude today as were captured and sold during the 350 plus year span of the transatlantic slave trade, Time magazine reported in March 2019. According to the ILO, modern slavery has seen 25 million people in debt bondage and 15 million in forced marriage. Modern slavery earns criminal networks an estimated $150 billion a year, just slightly less than drug smuggling and weapons trafficking. Modern slavery is far and way more profitable now than at any point in human history. All right. Siddharth Kara, an economist at the Carr Center for Human Rights Policy, told Time, according to the 2018 Global Slavery Index, G20 countries, there we go with the G20, G20 countries import some $354 billion worth of products at risk of being produced by modern slavery every year. Not every other year, but every year. Every year. In 2017, shocking footage emerged from actual slave auctions in Libya. Slave auctions in Libya. This is after they ousted Gaddafi and the U.S. took over. Are you listening? Are you paying attention? Shocking video footage from actual slave auctions in Libya. CNN documented an incident in which Arabic-speaking men sold off 12 Nigerians. In 2019, Time magazine interviewed an African migrant laborer who had been sold into slavery on his way to Europe. Quote, when Elaborate reached Libya's southern border, he met a seemingly friendly taxi driver who offered to drive him to the capital city, Tripoli, for free. Instead, he was sold to a white Libyan or Arab for $200. He was forced to work off his debt on a construction site, a pattern that repeated each time he was sold and resold. Sex trafficking forms a considerable part of modern slavery. The Nigerian mafia, for instance, according to a 2019 report by the Washington Post, is trafficking women by the tens of thousands. Okay? That's right. Some experts say that as many as 20,000 Nigerian women, some of them minors, arrived in Sicily between 2016 and 2018, trafficked in cooperation with Nigerians in Italy and back home. According to the July 2017 report by the UN's International Organization for Migration, known as IOM, quote, over the past 3 years, IOM Italy has seen almost 600% increase in the number of potential sex trafficking victims arriving in Italy by sea. The upward trend has continued during the first 6 months of 2017, with most victims arriving from Nigeria. In its report, IOM estimated that 80% of girls, often minors, arriving from Nigeria, whose number soared dramatically from 1,454 in 2014 to 11,009 in 2016, were potential victims of trafficking for sexual exploitation, end quote. In parts of the African continent, especially in Sahel, slavery is still ingrained in traditional culture. Ingrained in traditional culture. Even though officially slavery has been outlawed in countries such as Mali and Mauritania, so-called descent-based slavery or caste-based slavery, in which slavery is passed down from generation to generation so that slaves are born into their predicament, is still practiced by some. In 2013, it was estimated that 250,000, not 250, 250,000 people were living in slave-like conditions in Mali, where slavery is not illegal. Slavery is not illegal in Mali. When have you heard Black Lives Matter speak out, protest, and riot over that? One Malian slave, uh, Ricato, told The Guardian in 2013 that she became a slave at the age of 7 when her mother, also a slave, died. Quote, my father could only watch on helplessly as my mother's master came to claim me and my brothers, end quote, she said. She worked as a servant for the family without pay for nearly 20 years and was forced into a marriage with another slave who she didn't know so that she could supply her masters with more slaves. In Mauritania, it is estimated that up to 20% of the population is enslaved, even though slavery was officially outlawed in 1981. The slaves are mostly from the herein minority, who are Black Africans, as opposed to the nearly half of the population who are Arabs or Berbers, according to a report by The Guardian from 2018. Did I not tell you about this in our last live? That the Arabs are the ones that organized and put into and structured the Atlantic slave trade? No one wants to talk about that. Slavery has a long history in the North African desert nation. For centuries, Arabic-speaking Moors raided African villages, resulting in a rigid caste system that still exists to this day, with darker-skinned inhabitants beholden to their lighter-skinned masters. Slave status is passed down from mother to child, and anti-slavery activists are regularly tortured and detained if not killed. Yet the government routinely denies that slavery exists in Mauritania, instead praising itself for eradicating the practice. The report also described a few of the horrific fates of the herein slaves. Quote, Akato Mint Mbarak was a slave by descent in the Rosso area. Like her sister, she was taken away from her mother and then given to a member of the master's family to be a servant. She got married in the home of her masters and had 8 children, 2 of whom were taken away from her to be slaves in other families. In 2010, her older sister was able to free her after she herself fled her masters when they poured hot embers over her baby, killing it. Black Lives Matter and the many corporate executives, university professors, media, sports, and cultural personalities who are bending their knees to the movement seem totally unconcerned by the fates of the likes of people in Mauritania. More likely, than not, they have never heard of her or her many fellow sufferers. They are apparently black lies that do not matter to anyone except the courageous people working in the local anti-slavery organizations. Instead, Black Lives Matters and its psychopants endlessly debate changing the names of streets and universities and removing statues, all of which do not amount to anything more than infantile virtue signaling. They waste time debating whether people who were never themselves slaves should receive reparations from people who never owned a slave. To engage in all this posturing while ignoring the staggering 40 million current victims of actual slavery not only represents the immeasurable depths of woke hypocrisy, but constitutes an extreme insult to those who are suffering their slavery in silence while slowly dying from the physical, sexual, and emotional abuse that they are being forced to endure. If anything is offensive, it is that. All right? Ladies and gentlemen, slavery is alive and well today, and it is real. It is very real. All right? You won't hear them deal with this though. You're not. They're never going to talk about it. They're never going to talk about it because it defeats their narrative. It makes them look silly. Therefore, they can't have that. They can't have it. They're not going to have it. They're not going to stand for it. They're going to ignore it and pretend like they don't know or that it doesn't exist. That's what they do. All right? Now, I'm going to tell you why they're not dealing with it. Because it's not affecting their money. Remember, sex trafficking is a global network, not among, common street thugs. No. It's done by governments, ladies and gentlemen. Governments are involved in it. Just about every government on the face of the earth is involved in it. So all of this, what does all this mean? What does all this really mean? What are we really saying? What does this really mean? I'll tell you what it means. It means that the old America is dead. That's what it means. The old world that you and I once knew is gone. It's gone. All right? It no longer exists. And because of this foolishness, the world is about to pay the price for it. Like I said, there's a big algo shift coming. And it's going to take the world by storm. It's deeper than just a transfer of wealth. And you're going to see it and feel it for yourself. Don't take my word for it. Just wait and see. Wait and see what happens. And then from that point, you can say, well, he did say that. He did warn that these things were going to happen. Yeah, I did. For good reason. All right. So please get ready, ladies and gentlemen. Please, 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 please. Handle your business. Do what you need to do. All right. Because this right here is not going away. It's only going to get worse and continue to evolve. All right. I don't know how anybody does it. I don't know how you continue to pretend like these things don't exist and that it doesn't affect you. It affects you in more ways you can imagine. All right. That's one of the downsides of being in a global, marketplace. What happens in one country will affect you too. That's right. That's how they know the numbers. You're right. Like I just said, Sex trafficking is a global thing. It's not just a local thing. Governments are involved. Just like the war on drugs, drugs are also a government thing. All right. So with that being said, y'all, I'm done. I'm out. Be on the lookout for tonight's report. All right, because tonight's report will have all of the algo shifts in it. Okay, those of you that subscribe to the PulseWave reports, you will see tremendous difference in a lot of the securities that you normally deal with, and that's because of the ever so changing market environment. So the reports must reflect that change. There's no other way to put it. There's no kinder way to even say it. It just is what it is. All right. So with that being said, fam, I mean, like I said, I'm done. I have nothing else to say and or contribute. I think I've hit everything I needed to hit today and wanted to hit. All right. So with that being said, you know what it is, pulsewavetrading.com. And remember, bulls make money, bears make money, and pigs get slaughtered. So remember to take what you can and give nothing back. I'll see everybody in the trading room, and everyone else, I'll see you this evening for the end of the report. Peace.